What's going on, guys? I hope you enjoyed that clip right there of the Rocket, the Black Heart, the King of Hearts. He's just a great heart. Owen Hart, just during his career in the industry. And also, there's one quick point that I forgot to mention prior to the video. Even I am guilty of forgetting this many times, but Owen had a prior to him really getting a strong push to the WWE in late 1993 with the Survivor Series thing with his brother Bret. It's really, one should keep in mind that Owen was an integral part in the angle between Bret Hart and Jerry King Lawler in 1993. It extended two companies, not only the WWE, but also the USWA, which was getting a lot of support by the WWE at the time. A lot of co-promotion between both brands. And Jerry Lawler and Bret's feud extended into the USWA, United States Wrestling Association. And what you had was something that was pretty cool. Owen Hart and Bret Hart were heels in Memphis. And you had Jerry Lawler, who of course was the face and about the 20 billion time USWA heavyweight champion of the world. And they were just antagonists. You know, when I look back at some of these clips and stuff of Owen and Bret, you know, they're pretty impressive. And, you know, you could check out a lot of cool stuff right there. And I'm going to post some links on my YouTube page over in the description box if I can find them, of Owen and Bret just doing a lot of good heelish stuff. You know, just incredible just to see those guys eat it up like that. And of course, Bret was familiar with being heel in the Hart Foundation in the late 80s with Jimmy Hart, but that was such a long time ago. But obviously, Bret hadn't forgotten anything about being a heel, and Owen just ate it up. And I think this was a really good predecessor for Owen to transition into a heel in the WWE, something he had never been before. And it worked out to a T a year later in 1994. And then you have Bret Hart, who also knew how to play a heel. He knew how to work off a heel as a babyface. So it was just all the little did the WWE really know. They were in USWA to an extent. The heel Owen Hart in 1994 was being slowly built in 1993, whether that was inadvertent or excuse me, whether that was indirect or it was direct. So I thought that was a really key point to really point out there. And also, as I mentioned prior to the break, I was going to talk about Owen Hart and his stint in the WWE after 1994. Now, I've already discussed how big Owen was in 1994. And in my opinion, the WWE did not capitalize on Owen's heat in 1994 leading into 1995. Now, in 1995, Bret Hart was quietly continuing his feud with Bob Backlund. And although that Bret and Owen's feud had not ended, it had slowed down quite a bit leading into January and February of 1995. Now Owen wanted to get back at Bret the best way he can, and that's by picking a former partner, a former opponent of Bret Hart's, and winning the WWE Tag Team Championship. Now, from Bret Hart's perspective, Bret Hart has mentioned this, that it was supposed to be Jim the Anvil Neidhart that was supposed to be with Owen Hart at WrestleMania 11, but that wasn't the case for several circumstances. And instead, Yokozuna was chosen to partner up with Owen Hart. And to make a long story short, they win the WWE Tag Team Championship, and the most unlikely tag team you could probably think to win the tag team titles, but several people caught on to this tag team. And it was really the first tag team in many years that the WWE had developed by themselves. You know, two really good singles guys coming together, and managed by Jim Cornette, and of course Mr. Fuji as the interpreter of Yokozuna. it was a really successful pairing that many people didn't see occurring. I darn sure didn't see it occurring, but it was something that, you know, it's just magical. Sometimes things just work out, even though, you know, it may be the second choice or the third choice. You know, things just work out. And it's also key to point out that, you know, prior to that, not to go off on a big tangent, the WWE did, you know, they really dedicated time and energy for the Bret Hart and Owen Hart feud. And I don't know if they thought it was losing some steam, or whether they had to, you know, add some other pieces to it. You know, Owen, you know, interfered with Bret's title, title aspirations against Diesel in 1995 at the Royal Rumble, in which he interfered in the match. But I thought at the time it was going to lead to Bret and Owen finally having a final match to end this feud at WrestleMania 11, but it just didn't happen. But like I said, sometimes things just work out. If it's plan B or C, D, E, you know, going on and on. And Yokozuna and Owen Hart were just a really good pairing. Those two had great matches. You still had the Bret Hart aspect in the equation, in terms of Camp Cornette not liking Bret Hart, Owen Hart not liking Bret, and trying to one-up his brother as much as he could. And eventually, there was really no finite ending between them, which I think the WWE really dropped the ball in 1995. But, you know, they were the tag team champions for 5 months until they eventually lost them in that ridiculous match at In Your House 3 against Shawn Michaels and Diesel. And then eventually the next, you know, which is just weird, the belts were eventually handed back to them before the Smoking Guns regained the championships again. And after that, Owen Hart and Yokozuna would continue to team off and on until the end of the year. So it was like the WWE was like saying, all right, this is something we didn't expect to work, but, you know, nevertheless, we're going to run with it for a little bit. And to me, that just hurt Owen's steam. You know, Bret Hart by then was doing some ridiculous feuds of his own after his feud with Bob Backlund. And really, the only feud that, you know, really Bret Hart had really anything going on with, two of them, was his continuation feud with Jerry Lawler. And some really good stuff with Hakushi. So that's pretty much, you know, it for Bret Hart and Owen Hart's feud. There really just was no finite ending to it. And I think that's the one thing you have to keep in mind in terms of WWE dropping the ball on Owen. There's a lot more that could have happened between those two that could have directly feuding each other, not indirectly feuding with each other, but directly feuding with each other. But to make a long story short, Owen is with Team Cornette, with the British Bulldog now, who eventually turns heel, and they're now a tag team. And in 1996 and in 1997, you basically had, you know, Owen in just weird feuds as a singles wrestler in 1996, I should say. He had a feud with, of course, Raymond Rougeau, who was then a French television announcer for the WWE, still when they had that French broadcasting team together. But that didn't lead to anything, and instead of like this ridiculous boxing match, and if many people don't know about Raymond Rougeau, he is a former boxer, a pretty damn good boxer in his own right. And I think that's really was the emphasis of the show. A really good tough guy in real life, from what I hear. Not necessarily his brother Jacques, but, you know, as we all know, Jacques knocked the hell out of Dynamite Kid during the late 80s. But I don't want to go too much off on a tangent. But basically, not to go, too far, Owen was just booked in ridiculous feuds in 1996. And eventually, he and Davey Boy Smith, British Bulldog, tag up. They become the WWE Tag Team Champions. They'd have the championships for a very long time. Owen's in a great match with Davey Boy in February of 1997, the first European Championship tournament. That's eventually won in Germany by the British Bulldog. Great match. Those two started to have a little feud going on together. And this is where it's very important to remember. This is really right before Owen and Bret reunite.